What you get out of that situation is a complete semantic uncertainty. You do not know if you described your sources correctly, if it collides or connects with the semantic universe of the enterprise you find yourself in. And that is often an afterthought. If data is an afterthought, then metadata is the thought after that afterthought. It's so easy to have the wrong incentives. It's so easy for a consultant to say, if I increase the complexity of what I'm saying, I'll be selling more hours. For the employee, if they are ignoring fatal, dysfunctional features in an IT project, they will meet the deadline faster and they will get their promotion and their bonus.
Welcome back to Data Reality Check, where data meets the real world. Why data still doesn't make sense. This is the episode of today. So welcome back to our podcast, where data meets the real world. This podcast basically is to step back from the trends and the technology cycles to talk about the deeper issues that determine whether data actually works for organizations or quietly creates confusion. Because despite decades of investment in data platform, analytics, and AI, many organizations still struggle a lot with something fundamental. Their data doesn't make any sense. Not because it's missing, not because it's not shared or stored, but because meaning was never clearly designed. So today's core question is, why do organizations still struggle to make sense of their data, even after investing heavily in managed data catalogs, in platforms, and so on? To explore this, I'm joined by someone who has spent his career working at the foundation of how data is structured, understood, and used. So I'm really, really happy to welcome Ole Olesen to the show today. He's globally known and recognized expert in data modeling, metadata, enterprise data architecture, of course, two O'Reilly books author, the Enterprise Data Catalog, and the Fundamentals of Metadata Management, where he introduces a powerful way of thinking with the metagrid about metadata not as a documentation, but as a connected system that helps organizations understand how data, systems, and business concepts relate to each other. So what I basically appreciate about Ole is basically bringing this structure to something many organizations struggle with, creating a shared layer of meaning that allows this data to be used, reused, or scaled. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you. This is too much. You make me blush. Thank you.
Now, I always liked, I love your book of the Enterprise Data Catalog. I was such a fan because you really speak the truth in many, many ways. And you know that I'm about data management, so.
Yes, and congratulations with your book just published. It was a pleasure to read, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for actually having the time to read it and provide some feedback. But let's go to the podcast here. I want today to go a little bit into the metagrid concept. A lot of people like the concept, but they don't really understand. So I want to basically throw some questions about it. I want to start with a paradox. So organizations have modern data platforms, cloud infrastructure, a lot of tools with the AI world now, you know how it is. And yet many still struggle with inconsistent definitions, all these crazy metrics that collapse between each other, and of course, confusion about what their data actually represents. From your perspective, why does this happen so consistently if we are not able to shift out of this paradigm?
Oh, big question. I think a part of the answer, at least, has to do with the good old Conway's law, just applied in a different setting that we're normally thinking about it. So Conway's law is this law that kind of dictates that whatever structure you have of your organization will define the communication structure also, and the means and modes of communication. And that is obviously IT in our era. So basically, however a company is organized is also the way it communicates and subsequently the way it builds software. And so in that is the inherent building of silos across the organization, unfortunately. That also goes for metadata.
Yeah, and I still don't understand, right? Because I've been working in data like since 2012, 13, before even a data engineer was a thing. We're
Hmm.
still stuck in these ways, right? But we just have these silos where is everything very boxed, but some way,
Yeah,
somehow we share data or we say, no, I don't want to share my data. That's mine. Why should I even do that? But again, there's no meaning, no context, nothing, right? Where do you think the organizations mistake this technical progress for this conceptual clarity?
I think now you mentioned that you have been in data engineering before data engineering was a term. I think if we take that point of departure, not you in particular, but data engineering as a whole, um, we have a situation where many companies typically work with data engineering from, I won't say a theoretical point of view, but a greenfield point of view. Data mesh, for example. I'll be talking about this. Actually, I'll be talking about the Metagrid at a conference where we will both be speaking in Antwerp, the Data Mesh Live conference in Antwerp this summer 26. I look forward to that. It's very clear if you look in the data mesh book, like the idea of the data mesh originated from this book, right, by Raygada and if you look into that book and you actually look at, okay, what does it take to build a data product and where does the semantics come from and so forth, you can very clearly see, like it's written on the pages, that the data engineer building the data product has his or her point of departure right there. It's just a person building a data product without any prior knowledge, without any context, without consulting anyone. Someone just creates the semantic universe that wraps a potential data product. And that is a mistake. And it's a mistake that is often done. And I'm sorry to sound a little harsh saying it's a mistake. You could perhaps be a little more diplomatic and say it's not the best approach and so forth. But it really is, unfortunately, a mistake because what you get out of that situation is a complete semantic uncertainty. You do not know if you described your sources correctly, if it collides or connects with the semantic universe of the enterprise you find yourself in. And that is often an afterthought. If data is an afterthought, then metadata is the thought after that afterthought. It's really something that is not considered of very high value. But I see it as the root cause of all the, like, I really do see it as the root cause of why these initiatives fail because they built on an ignorance of everything that came before them. And it's very typical for engineers to do that. And there's nothing wrong in that. Engineers will, by nature, they want to build, right? Engineers want to build and create, and there's nothing wrong in that. But other disciplines would have looked to the sources and consulted the past. And that is something that is missing in data engineering, and therefore you will have this clash. So imagine if you actually get to build a data mesh and you get to build a universe of domains of various types of data. At a certain point, that will clash with the enterprise reality because the enterprise reality is already there. It already has its systems, it's already working. And so once a mesh gets a certain size, if it's been built in a silo, in a bubble of like 10 or 20 data engineers that just geeked away and had a party, then it will hit an enterprise reality where it doesn't match. And that'll be the limit of the scalability of that structure, for better or worse.
Yeah, I completely agree because this show up later, right, in the analytics and the decision making because it was built just for the sake of being built, right, of doing some dashboard, for example, maybe some fancy platforms and so on. So I see a lot this with my clients when I go and talk to them, and most of them are so afraid to talk to business for some reason. It's like, have you talked to business? How do you? Where did you get these use cases? Because they come to me for AI or for any other topics with, I don't know, 20 use cases. And I ask them, okay, Which one is the priority? Have you talked to business? No, we don't talk to business because they don't want to talk to us. And this kind of rivalry, it doesn't make any sense because they build things, as you said, as builders, and then there is no usability, there is no understanding, there is no context, as you said, around that. I assume you see also this quite often in your day to day.
Oh yes, I see it a lot, and yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound arrogant, but for me, sometimes it's a mystery, right? You have these extremely talented people, like big time programmers or like just mathematicians that are just so intelligent and way more intelligent than I am, and then still they can't figure out why doesn't this work? And And that's where you have to like, put them in a room, make them, like, totally relax and just tell them that it's because you didn't take the stakeholders into account. You didn't consult what was already there. Like, the fight for money, project money, funding got so fierce that, ignoring what was already there was perhaps even an advantage, right? But that won't make such a project take off. So I'm sorry for sounding a little cynical, but but often the programmatical or mathematical intelligence of an employee does not necessarily guarantee a successful outcome in these endeavors. Yeah, it's a little harsh.
It's not because is the reality, right? At the end, I see this a lot, and when I talk to my clients, I'm not the typical consultant, for example, who goes and that offers like the best option just because I want to sell something. But I will tell them the reality in this case, like, look, what you're doing right now doesn't make sense and it's gonna fail. You can try to do something, but in the next 6 months, probably no one is gonna use it, or it's gonna be broken, or is gonna be like, forget it. Like, just leave it there in a cemetery of data products, dashboards, you name it, right? It's just gonna be there, like wasting resources and just a waste of budget. And then, of course, the CDO or the CTO will come upset, like, where is the value? Where is the ROI? Where is my money? And I see that often. It's a cycle, and most of the organizations fall into this trap, I feel.
Yeah, a lot do at least. Yeah, I agree. I've seen functional data meshes. I have seen very, very good data product architectures. Obviously, I've seen functional data catalogs also. So it works. It can work, and it's a pleasure when it works. I can also say that in terms of like the ideas of the metagrid, they kind of extend a little bit the data universe. I spend a lot of time in enterprise architecture in my more enterprisey roles. Now I'm with a software vendor. And I'm the chief evangelist of Action, right? So in that capacity, I really have the chance to communicate a vision and meet clients and make that vision come true. But I've also worked, like the majority of my career, I've worked on the other side of the table. And that is something that I am very thankful for, because knowing the enterprise reality and having lived that enterprise reality just gives you a deeper understanding of the severity of what that really of what it really is and what it takes to make something work. I have this chapter, maybe you remember it from my latest book, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly chapter, where you can really say that like internal employees, external consultants, and software vendors, they can all be good, bad, and ugly. Like they can all be that, right? And so in this matrix of people and intentions, sometimes IT goes well and sometimes it goes haywire. And the reason is that like it's so easy to have the wrong incentives. It's so easy for a consultant to say, if I increase the complexity of what I'm saying, I'll be selling more hours. For the employee, if they are ignoring fatal dysfunctional features in an IT project, they will meet the deadline faster and they will get their promotion and their bonus, right? And so for the software vendor, obviously they can also say that, well, obviously our technology can do this, and so therefore you should buy it, even though they are well aware That's not the purpose of the technology. So everyone in this matrix can have like evil incentives or bad incentives. But likewise, you also find the exact opposite, like people that actually wants to make technology work as employees, as consultants, and as software vendors. Obviously, that exists also. So, but I see it very much rooted in sociology, and like fast money is easy to get, but you will not get long-lasting professional relationships out of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I actually, in my book, and probably you remember the story of the Ferrari, when I
Yeah.
was brought for this data platform to see what they can do because no one was using it. One of the problems was a big consultant firm. And when I arrived there, they proposed them to do this crazy data platform that will bring them like the full analytics, very cool, blah, 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 ML, whatever, you name it.
Mm.
And at the end, of course, no one was using it. And when I actually checked the architecture, they actually built it for them to spend a lot of money. Some of the components made no sense at all. They just wanted to basically sell the because of course they have partnerships, right? So if they have the partners inside, I was like, you don't even need this. I mean, yes, you have a lot of data, but could have been much simpler. And also with the use cases that actually I found in the first week, I had a workshop with all the leaders from different areas, and I was having lunch with them. And I just started to ask random questions like, what kind of data do you use? Are you having any pain points? Are you using AI? Just like small talk. And all of them told me all the problems that they have that could have been solved with that platform, but the people from the data team didn't know how to talk to the business people to help them. So they were
Yeah.
contracting their own consultants outside to do
Mm.
some data stuff for them. And you see, like the problem with the vendor, right? The problem with the people inside. It's just like everything at once.
Okay.
And that's why one of the reasons I also wrote the book, right? Because I wanted something more practical in the sense of, okay, talk to business. This is really important. The reason why I moved from data engineering, from software engineering, to do more data product management, data management, and governance and strategy is because I wanted to be this bridge because there's there's not that many people who actually does that, right? Either is the business or tech and one person trying to advocate, but the change is really difficult to achieve if there is no good communication.
No, agreed. I mean, so I was really enjoying the metaphor in your book, the Ferrari that nobody uses. I've seen a lot of Ferraris in my professional life. I have actually managed to drive some of them, but I've certainly also seen a lot of money poorly spent. I was wondering, and this may be a little off topic, but I was wondering what 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 AI will do to all of this. Because if you could you chat your way to actually turn on that Ferrari? I was just wondering when you were like while you were asking the question if that would be possible. Like if I ask Claude or Mistral enough times, would it actually be possible to make it work to bridge the data people and the business people? Anyway, I'm thinking a lot about AI these days, but maybe I'm going off topic here. Aiden, please tell
No,
me if
it's fine. Anyway, we will touch it at some point today. So, because it's a reality, AI is here to stay, and we have to talk about these topics as well. Actually, before we go into the AI topic, I wanted to talk to you about the metagrid because I think this is
yeah.
part of the foundations to have good AI before we touch the AI topic. So, actually, the concept I'm really fascinated about it because it really relates with my own thoughts. Right, we're talking about data products, semantic contracts, governance embedded into the data, all these topics. But I feel like there is a lot of people, even though they see your post, your blog post, and so on, that might be still a little bit confused. So I
Yeah.
want for the audience for you to explain the metagrade, maybe in simple words for also for non-tech people, right? Also for
Hmm?
tech people, but something that you can give us that it's actually will clarify the air without even reading your book.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And obviously, I'm happy to do that. I mean, I'm very inspired by all the movements in IT and technology architecture that is striving towards decentralization. And so, obviously, in that context, I'm a very, very big admirer of ThoughtWorks, obviously. So I was very, very inspired by the microservice movement. I think it's an extremely complicated architecture technologically to succeed with. It is also extremely impressive when you see it working. I was very inspired by the data mesh movement for similar reasons. In that context, it was not about operational data. It was not about executing a value chain in a company. It was about the analytical data and how to free that from these big, big platforms, right? And so basically, I think that there is a similar architecture that you can create for metadata about the IT landscape. And that's what I call the metagrid. The metagrid is an acceptance that we will never have one big platform, one big tool to understand the IT landscape. We have a lot of small tools to do that. We have endpoint management systems, asset management systems, CMDBs in IT service management solutions. That's the Atlassians and ServiceNows and many others of the world, right? And there are many other tools, but what what I just found very interesting is that all these tools, they claim to have this universal truth of the IT landscape. How many applications do we have? How many integrations? Um, what are the types of data in our applications? What are the types of endpoints we have in the organization? Who owns them? Who are the employees? And so forth. And so instead of thinking about data that would execute a value chain, or instead of thinking about data that would foster advanced analytics at scale, I was thinking a lot about metadata that simply describe the IT landscape of a company. Now, why did I think about that? I worked as an enterprise architect for many years. I worked in data and information management for many years. And this is extremely costly. Like, you have seen the Ferraris that no one uses yourself. They cost a lot of money. And if you build them again and again, right next to each other, that is a lot of money to burn. So all those applications, all those platforms, all the integrations between them, the partly functional features that deliver some output that makes it impossible to sunset these technologies, all of that all together, that's metadata about the IT landscape. And that's what the metagrid addresses. It says that instead of thinking of yet another platform, yet another technology, yet another software vendor that we have to wrestle with, let's try to imagine metadata as something that is decentralized, that can live in many places at once, but improve the existing technologies that we have simply by coordinating across silos that we haven't uh, hitherto addressed. So business processes is something that is maintained for financial auditing in big companies. They have a pretty good overview of the business processes in the company. Many other technologies wants to use that or is trying to map that themselves. The data privacy officer, for example, for sensitive data processing, or the cybersecurity experts in the information security management team. If we can bring these teams together, if we can crash the Conway's law of metadata, and we can save a lot of money and we can make our technologies perform better. That's that's a way too long answer, I realize right now, but that's the
We
metagrid.
need it.
Thank
We
you.
need it. We need it.
Thanks, Amy. That's the metagrid. That's what it's all about. And I'm like, I haven't been extremely vocal about it because at a certain point I sensed that it would be a hype thing. And I don't want to be a hype thing because then I know that at some point I won't be the hype anymore. And it's not in fear of that. It's in respect of my own idea that I'm trying to not become a hype thing. So I went quiet about the metagrid a little bit, but that was very much on purpose. There's this Danish rock band. It translates poorly into English, but basically what he says is, it makes more sense in Danish, but like if you want to fly very, very far, like if you want to go very far in a plane, you have to fly under the radar. You have to not get discovered. Because once you get discovered, everyone sees you. But if you can fly under the radar, you can go way further. That makes a little more, like, linguistically, that makes more sense in Danish. But the idea here is that I'm trying to protect my idea, because I know it's like, and I know that it may sound harsh, but it's an empirical matter of fact what I describe. It is not up for debate. Companies have these technologies, and the metadata in these technologies overlap, and it's costing a lot of money. That is not up for debate. So I'm just putting the idea out there for the world to see, and I know, like, I was approached by a lot of companies, Fortune 100 companies, that have built metagrids, that have actually documented the metadata across these various tools in order to reduce the cost of the IT landscape altogether. So it works. Does it make any sense, Amy?
No, it completely makes sense, because for me, I'm a fan of metadata, right? I've been working when I was a data engineer, and I discovered DBT many years ago. I'm telling you, right? Like the first version, I found that, okay, this is something that we really need. And we are talking there only about semantics for data, and a little bit of data contracts and so on. But you're talking in a wider scope, right? That completely makes sense. So that's why I was really fascinated when you wrote this. And I understand the metaphor that you're saying, like, fly low under the radar,
Mhm.
because we have these concepts that comes every week on LinkedIn. Context graph is the new thing. A
Um,
few months before agentic, LLMs, data mesh was also like
yeah,
full blown for a couple of years. Now it's gone. That's why my book is not about, like the implement data products on data mesh, but as a concept, I think is the most valuable thing of that data mesh, for example.
I agree. I mean, I think data products is turning into something different than a buzzword. It's becoming a technology. It's becoming a functional unit that people wants to work with and build and consume. And so that's very positive. I looked at the data mesh movement and I said, I don't want to go through that inferno of hype cycle and a lot of debates on X and Reddit, where people would just like throw mud at each other, and like all of that is not for me. But admire Zhemak Dagani for having the energy to do it, and certainly seems with Next Data that she got, I don't know if it was what she wanted, but she got something extremely valuable out of it, which was a VC funded tech startup. And obviously that has to be a lot of fun. Um, but I will insist, on the other hand, that there is no product in a metagrid. There is nothing in the metagrid. It's really, really low key. It's documentation. It can be technical documentation, I get that, but it's not a product. It's never intended to be a product, because that would be the antithesis of what I'm saying, right? I'm saying that all these existing technologies that we have, those are the ones we should improve. We shouldn't build yet another layer of complexity on top of it. It wouldn't solve the problem.
I will ask you maybe a controversial question here, but I remember when Shamak, released the concept of data mesh many, many years ago. It was the same. Data mesh is not a product; it's a social technical framework and so on. And hence, she's building a product, right? So, do you think you might fall into that trap? I mean, maybe it's good for her. Again, good if you can get out of it. But I understand you want to defend your idea, but would you be able to hold up into the pressure of this evolving tooling world?
I mean, I am with a software vendor. I am explaining technology or software. Um, but I wanted to make it very clear that what we're building in action is not the metagrid. It can take part in a metagrid, as can, for example, Zhemak Dagani's software offering. But I cannot exclude that I will built software at some point in my life myself, but I am not even motivated to try to build something that I would call a metagrid. I'm not even motivated by it because it's not more than dishonest. I really can't see the idea of it. I would be compelled to build a better enterprise architecture management system or a better. I think endpoint management systems are very, very poorly conceived because it's way more important than people think for all kinds of reasons to manage endpoints correctly. So something like that would be interesting. What I find interesting, and there will be no shilling, but what I find interesting actually to by being in Action is that Action is a division, it's the data and AI division of HCL Software. And altogether, the stack of HCL Software is to a very high degree, and this is a complete coincidence, but it is to a very high degree the stack that I describe in Fundamentals of Metadata Management. This is just a complete coincidence because I had left Synea, the startup that I was part of when it was acquired by Action. I left with my equity, and then I was invited back in over half a year later because the executive team in Action regretted me not joining. So that's how that came into to being, and it's just this coincidence. But we are working with a framework that we call the XDO framework in HCL Software, which is a framework that I really like. It stands for experience, data, and operations, so XDO, and it kind of materializes the metagrid. But there's no like we won't be pitching it as the metagrid. It's not like that. It's just that it's kind of the same thing. You want to have cybersecurity awareness and evaluation of your IT landscape. You want to have business process mining in there as well, and you want to have sensitivity managed. You want to protect your endpoints. You want to like be able to plan the future, and so on and so on and so on. So it's kind of all in there, which is a very unique and just kind of happenstance thing. But that's not even my job right now to communicate, right? But no, so more to say, I think I'm at a very like I really enjoy where I am in my career, and I can't see any reason to change that. Um, Last time I built something myself was in HTML 20 years ago. So, and I really love that. I built a lot of web pages, but it's been a while since I built anything at all, and that's not even pure programming, right?
Yeah. I want to go a little bit deep in the metagrid because probably you talking to people, well, you also got inspired by writing your book and so on.
Mhm.
What are the problems that you see in the organizations that don't have this connective tissue between the system definitions and the ownership? How these contribute to this confusion, this duplication, the lack of trust when they don't have something like this that ties up like all the levels, right? All the systems together.
I think that's relatively easy to answer and at the same time relatively hard to explain. But like if you wanna answer it fast, like if we stay in the universe of data catalogs, it's every single cloud provider has its own data catalog, right? Azure has Purview, and AWS has both SageMaker and AWS Glue. Google Cloud has Google Data Catalog. All these are technical data catalogs. So they're not very user friendly, if I may be so honest. So you could imagine having, for example, our Action Data Intelligence platform on top to kind of mirror at a more user friendly level what's in these platforms for end users. But all of these systems have autonomy. So you can assign data ownership in all of them. And that will most likely be done. But next to all of this is typically one CMDB if you're in a regulated industry. So a configuration management database that has purposes in terms of audits and inspections and financial planning. And in that CMDB, there's also data ownership assigned at the application level. But Maybe you have even a situation where the company has gone through a merger and acquisition. That happens all the time. Maybe that company that was bought also had a CMDB, and maybe data ownership was also assigned in there. And this is so it's very easy to answer, and yet it's hard to explain, right? Because if you really look under the hood in what's in companies, and you don't start greenfield, but you actually start by asking, okay, what are the systems that already map the IT landscape? And you get a hard answer. You can provide a great overview, but you also get a difficult answer, because that's the metagrid. That's all these existing systems that collide, and sometimes they connect in meaningful ways, sometimes they oppose each other. But working with that is what the metagrid is all about.
Why do you think it's so hard to achieve, right? When you have this shared infrastructure, as you mentioned, I also been in a situation where a company had a merger and then they bought more companies and everybody has their own data platform and then they want to unify and then decentralize again, this
Yeah.
kind of thing. Why?
Yeah. It's all over. I know. I know.
What will
So,
be your approach, for example, when you go to one of these organizations and you have to advise them how to go with this complete mess, right? Because I can see myself, I don't know, in front of, I don't know, like I remember in this specific case, we did like an spreadsheet with all the systems, the owners, if we found an owner, because might be that the person left many years ago and it's been there laying down for years, right? And it's a never ending story. How do you even start trying to implement a metagrid when it's not a greenfield?
well, I'm not sure I would implement it. I would uncover it. It's already there. It's not in a very good state, but I think I would just start with what makes sense. So if someone really wants to unify data platforms, for example, then let's take an honest look at what that looks like. What does it take? What would be the semantic migration between these two platforms before it will actually happen? And so that's what I will do. I would solve problems one at a time. When new applications are onboarded, they could be onboarded in an enterprise architecture management tool for planning prior to going in live in production in the company. They would most likely be in a project phase in that tool, or in a project and portfolio management system of sorts. Aligning that with a CMDB is a big win, because you would not have to reproduce all that data in a new technology with a new team once that application or portfolio of applications goes live. So I would solve problems one at a time. This can grow organically.
Yeah, it makes sense. But don't you feel that at some point, I mean, especially in big organizations, right? It's like a never-ending story because it's, let's say, something like worldwide organizations, maybe retail or pharma. There are like systems and systems and systems, right? That's I imagine that should be super complicated. They maybe have a little bit more of a structure if it's pharma because they have some structure because of compliance, maybe. But it might feel tiring for some people working on these, trying to put this together. What is the best way to document it? How would you do that?
So I would only document the metadata. I wouldn't document anything else than that. So so that would be in what I would call architecture decision records, small records, how you would semantically structure something, the methodologies applied, and perhaps some examples. You could even have JSON scripts to show how data was exchanged. But basically, that's it. And I don't see. I know it's perhaps a matter of being a little weird, but I don't see the enormity of this as a problem. I only see it as something quite delightful. I have done this myself. I know architects that have done it, and when you see the economic benefit of doing it and the ease you provide to a team that has hitherto been exposed to an enormous hassle of calling people and setting meetings up and like fighting for the for obtaining truth. If you unlock that one step at a time, it becomes very rewarding to go to work. So, so I was actually planning on building a consultancy company doing exactly that. Because very few people, like I just sat down with this book, I just sat down and I studied a lot of different types of technologies, like business process mining, for example. They have their own standards, they have their own books, they have their own technologies, their own like working groups. Like it's a universe in itself. And right next to them sits the ITIL geeks that uses CMDBs for not the same purpose, but like it has overlapping purposes. And right next to them is the entire data community that also wants to document data in domains based on processes and capabilities and like so it's all these disciplines are connected, and that's really what the book is about. It's an encyclopedia of sorts of all these methodologies and technologies that all work with metadata in ways that are somewhat, not completely, but somewhat overlapping.
Yeah, that's what I find really fascinating for me, right? Specifically, because it's not only about the data people, right, anymore. It's a bigger concept, as you said, that link everything. And I can imagine that that will bring. I mean, I haven't been have the experience to implement something like this yet, so I cannot imagine the economical benefit. But I can see it, for example, in implementing data management the right way. Once you have a lot of automation and stuff, that you start that the people usually complain because it take a couple of years at least to see some benefit, when you do some data governance. But once you start like saving, for example, in cloud cost, in people and some other stuff, efficiency and processes and so on, the people is happy to continue to go the data governance, data management path, but they won't see it until it's already, many years after. And that's why most of the organizations drop, the idea of doing it. How quick do you think you can see these benefit when you start to implement the MetaGrid?
Yes, I have French roots also in my family, right? So, and I think this is the this is the winemaker branch of my family speaking, right? Because this will take a lot. This will take many years. It might even like you might. I mean, to be a little extreme about it, my kids or their kids would perhaps see the total benefit of this approach, right? I won't even see it myself, but I don't mind thinking like that for tech. I think I think we have way too short time horizons and we're not even being honest about it. Like I took an airplane this morning. I can bet you that airline has COBOL running in the mainframes to process my ticket because they all do, as do banks. And that code is what, 50, 60 years old? It's not going anywhere. So, so maybe we don't need a short time perspective, but I agree that the metagrid is something that has a long time perspective. Like the 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 savings are immediate. You can save money immediately, but you can build something that is extremely, extremely solid over time. I've seen Fortune 100 companies doing it. They reached out to me after discovering what I was writing about and they showed me what they've built. I was very impressed by that. You could see actually some of the people are public about it. You can see them in the praise quotes of the book. So
I think it's about long-term resilience, right? It's just continue to. It's a foundation that you need, especially now with the foundations for AI. But we also need, right? This is gonna pay it off as we keep evolving in the different technologies that are coming.
yeah, so my good friend Juan Sequeira he was from Data.World, now he's from ServiceNow. He asked me when he interviewed me about that. So how do you scale this? How do you scale the metagrid? And then I provided him an answer he tended to like, which is that I don't want to scale this. I'm not sure this needs to scale. I actually think I'm trying to do the opposite here. I'm trying to build something that's so solid that there's no sprawl around it. That next time some crazy data engineer wants to build a new data platform without consulting the past, that is just rejected. because that's just out of the question. We have our domains, we have our capabilities, we have our business processes. And don't you ever, never try to come and write them on a whiteboard and build them in a platform that no one can use because it collides with the reality they already know. Something as strong as that is what I would be very proud of to do.
Yeah, and I think it's really valuable, especially in the AI world now, because of course LLMs and the agents, they do not understand tables very well, but they
No.
understand these concepts and relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of it, right? That we need to move more. I was also speaking with Jessica Talisman in another episode that we recorded about, of course, the knowledge graphs, the ontologies, these kind of things. This is what is paving the future. We need more than this, and less than just, oh yeah, my data is all dumped in the data lake. Yeah, we'll figure it out later.
Yeah. 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 I've been thinking. You're right. I've actually been thinking about the term data and AI, which is obviously not something that I contradict. I work for a company that calls itself the data and AI division of HCL Software, right? And I love data, but there's something very paradoxical about that expression, data and AI, because if you think of it, data is the given from the Latin root. It's just the given. There's nothing added to it. It's just what is given, right? Whereas AI thrives on pretty much everything else than what is given. It needs something more, right, to work. So data and AI is really a paradoxical way of expressing something that it needs to work together. We cannot deny that. But it's really a paradox. It should have been knowledge and AI, or context and AI, or meaning and AI, or something else, because data in itself is just like poison for AI, right? So that expression is, I guess, I won't call it wrong, but it needs a little bit of explanation. Because you could say, well, unstructured data or data that has been augmented, because obviously large data sets with context is really great for AI.
Yeah, but that's actually a good thought, right? Because data, for the sake of data, could be anything. And AI, every time that I go to one of those AI strategy gigs that I go quite often, I have to explain them, right, what is necessary to have, for example, a semantic layer or some depth in the information, right? Something that gives some context to these models to produce something that is really valuable. Because otherwise, I mean, it sounds very cliche, trash in, trash out, right? But it's the truth. I mean, if you get the
Yeah,
data as is, you're gonna get a trashy model.
it's just like data. At the end of the day, it's just digits, right? It's just digits. So AI can really not make any sense of it just like that. And so therefore the expression in itself is a little paradoxical, even though I obviously acknowledge that it needs to be there.
And especially, with the as we move in AI, not only inside the data world, right, but also into other levels of the enterprise in general. I think these explicit entities, this relationship, this business meaning, these constraints, everything that you describe in your book becomes more and more relevant, because it's going to be needed. And it's needed now, but it's going to become like crucial.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually thinking about writing an appendix to, or like an epilogue or something to the book that I didn't write. But metadata is not going to be less of a problem in the future. It's going to be more of a problem in the future. And I'm not saying that because I have something to sell. I'm just like, if we imagine a reality where AI gets just a small percentage of the kind of influence we imagine, the amount of metadata will explode. It will explode because, like, in the mainframe world, we had, or back in the, like, before networks, there were one application or two applications in companies in the 50s and 60s, right? Then we had the mainframe universe and we began having company networks. So the amount of applications grew. Then came the internet, and then came the SaaS revolution, and the amount of applications grew and grew and grew. And entering the AI era, we will have an infinite number of applications. And what is the one thing they all hold? Data. And what will we use to describe that data? Metadata. So the amount of metadata will just grow and grow and grow. And so it will not become less of a problem with AI. It will become a bigger problem.
Yep, completely agree. Before we wrap up, I have two final questions for you.
Okay.
So, first, what's one thing organizations should stop doing if they want their data to make more sense?
Oh, oh. I feel like being the devil's advocate and say that they should stop treating engineers as if they understand semantics.
Good.
To be a little evil, Amy.
I love it. And the second one, what is one belief about modern data architecture that sounds convincing but is actually misleading people?
Oh, well, then let's go with context graph, right? Because you cannot have, but did Jessica Talisman also say that? Then I want to say something else. Did she
No,
say
no,
that?
she didn't say that.
Okay, okay. So context graphs. There is no graph without context, and there is no dedicated context graph revolution. But I'm guessing that once this podcast airs, everyone will have forgotten about the idea of the context graph. So let me just briefly do a recap and say that around the new year 2025, 2026, there was this paper on context graphs as if it was a new thing that could trace decisions in either programming languages or programming altogether, or unstructured data in text and email. And there's nothing new about that idea.
I completely agree. When I saw it on LinkedIn, I was like, here we go again, but it's
Yeah.
coming next week.
But it was short. That hype wave was extremely short.
Yeah. All right, Ale, thank you so much. This conversation really reinforces the fundamental. Data doesn't become valuable just because it's collected or stored. It becomes valuable when it's really understood. And that understanding requires structure, requires context, share meaning. So thank you so much for being here today and share your wisdom.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for inviting me.
You've been listening to Data Reality Check, where data meets the real world. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch up next time with more real talk from the front lines of data and AI. Stay data driven.